Hey guys, this is God of Politics, and welcome back to a brand new video. But before we get started with this video, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also follow me on Twitter and join the Discord. Those are both linked down in the description. But in today's video, I do want to talk about something that did happen a couple days ago, but I do think that it is very important. That is that the headline is that McConnell has dropped the filibuster demand, clearing way for Democrats to take full Senate control. So there was a lot of gridlock in the Senate over the agreement for power sharing because Democrats have 50 seats in the Senate, Republicans also have 50 seats. So there was a lot of gridlock over the conditions for which Democrats would take control of the committees. McConnell wanted Democrats to see that the filibuster would not go away. Democrats would not accept that, but they have reached an agreement on it. So this was late Monday night. I'm recording this video on Wednesday, but this was late Monday night, saying that he was open to a power sharing agreement with Democrats that did not include a written commitment to keeping the filibuster. And this is because two Democratic senators, Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona, voiced support for the long-standing rule. McConnell signaled a willingness to move forward as a result of that. So there has now been a power sharing agreement. Democrats will take control of the Senate committees. There will be an equal number of Democrats and Republicans due to the fact that the committees or the overall Senate is 50-50, but you will only need 50% of the vote to advance a bill or a judge or cabinet nominee from the committee to the overall Senate. And, a lot of this seems like just, procedural stuff that is not of great importance, but it is very important. And I'm going to talk about why in a second, because you also have Chuck Schumer, who did say that he was unwilling to promise to maintain the filibuster. I think that if Democrats did have the votes, they would have gotten rid of the filibuster. And of course, the filibuster does now only exist for legislation. So, if you want to pass a piece of legislation, basically the only way to do it is if you get 60 votes. And I'll talk about the exception to that in a second. But basically, the only way you can do it is 60 votes. Democrats had hoped, at least some Democrats had hoped, that they would get rid of that rule, so you'd only need 51 votes. And now the Democrats have a trifecta in the government. They were hoping that they could get their agenda passed. Mitch McConnell wanted to try and stop that, but he did receive support from Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, who said they would not get rid of the filibuster. So McConnell, of course, said that he wanted Democrats to be able to preserve that 60-vote threshold to pass nearly every piece of legislation, emphasis on nearly every piece of legislation, a rule known as a filibuster, in exchange for the transfer of control of the Senate committees. In a statement overnight, McConnell said, "Today, two Democratic senators publicly confirmed they will not vote to end the legislative filibuster. They agree with President Biden's views and mine that no Senate majority should destroy the rights of the future minorities of both parties to help shape legislation." The legislative filibuster was a key part of the foundation beneath the Senate's last 50-50 power sharing agreement in 2001. With these assurances, I look forward to moving ahead with a power sharing agreement modeled on that precedent. And the thing about this is, a lot of people have portrayed this as a victory for the Democrats and a loss for Mitch McConnell, saying that McConnell caved and McConnell went into the Democrats' demands. But really, that's not it, because McConnell ended up winning. The filibuster is going to remain in place, and that's really all McConnell wanted, because if you go back to 2013, that is when Democrats, under the leadership of Senator Harry Reid of Nevada, first nuked the filibuster for judicial nominees, lower judicial nominees, and cabinet nominees, because Republicans had done more filibusters in Obama's first term of cabinet nominees than in the rest of history, American history combined. And so, the filibuster had become abused by the Republican Party, so Democrats got rid of it. Then in 2017, Republicans got rid of the filibuster for Supreme Court nominees. Now, a lot of people thought that had Democrats gotten the trifecta, they would have gotten rid of the filibuster, but now, because of Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, they are not going to have that done. And what this means is it's going to be much harder, much harder for Joe Biden's agenda to get passed, especially on things that aren't related to the budget. And the reason for that is because of a process which many of you may be familiar with, but it's a process called budget reconciliation. Now, this is a process that was created by the Congressional Budget Act of 1974, and reconciliation allows for expedited consideration of certain tax, spending, and debt limit legislation. In the Senate, reconciliation bills aren't subject to filibuster, and scope of amendments is limited, giving the process real advantages for enacting controversial budget and tax measures. This paper addresses some frequently asked questions about reconciliation. Now, I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but I'm just going to sum it up. So basically, filibuster is when you can get around, reconciliation is when you can get around the filibuster. You can say that you only need 51 votes to pass a piece of legislation instead of 60 votes. Now, this is a process that has been used a lot. It's been used 21 times since 1980, which is the first year that they used the process. It was used for the Bush tax cuts in 2001 and 2003. It was used for the Affordable Care Act to amend the Affordable Care Act, and it was used for the tax cuts in 2017 under Trump. So they also used it to try and get rid of the Affordable Care Act, and they vetoed it under Obama, and then they also tried it in 2017, and it failed in the Senate, of course, with John McCain, that infamous moment. But the thing about reconciliation is that it is very limited. You can only use it for 3 different things: spending, revenues, and the federal debt limit. So basically, you cannot use the reconciliation to just, enact gun control or use immigration or that kind of thing. You cannot do that. You also cannot include Social Security. So, if Republicans had a trifecta, they couldn't gut Social Security. And it also says that, it can be used to address mandatory or entitlement spending. That is programs such as Medicare, Medicaid. They can use it for all those things, but not Social Security. Mandatory spending is determined by rules set in ongoing authorization laws. So changing spending usually requires amending those laws. So, you can use reconciliation for a number of things, and one of the other key things is that you cannot increase the debt. So, one of the key provisions of the 2017 tax cuts is that after 10 years, the taxes actually went up, because after 10 years, you have to prove to the Congressional Budget Office that the deficit won't go up. So the Republicans said, well, we're just going to put in tax increases after 10 years. So they have tax cuts for the first 10 years. And then in order to not increase the deficit, they've put in tax increases after that. And so that's very crucial to think about. But, under the Affordable Care Act, they made this argument that they would not increase the deficit by the amendments they were putting in. And they're going to do the same thing here because, if, say, Biden wants to do infrastructure spending, he can't really do that through legislation, through reconciliation, unless he also puts tax reform in there. And, a lot of this gets kind of nerdy and geeky when you get into the Senate rules of it, but it is very, very important because you can only also do this once a year pretty much. It's usually all combined together. 3 different bills, spending, revenue, federal limit, it's always usually combined into one bill. And that's not what I expect the Democrats to do. I expect them to try tax reform. They're going to have to increase taxes along with increasing spending because, Biden's come along with a $1.9 trillion relief bill for COVID. He can't just spend that $1.9 trillion without proving that the deficit isn't going to go up. So I think that it'll include tax increases along with that, which may be quite unpopular for many people. But overall, what this is showing is that Democrats really aren't going to get much done. Really, all they can do is have some little spending increases. Sure, Bernie's the head of the budget committee. Maybe he can throw some things in there that'll get done in the budget. But really, Joe Biden's not going to get much done when it comes to legislation, especially on things that aren't related to the budget. And what this means is that they're probably looking at quite a bleak image for the midterms. Now, I have the midterm map up here for the 2022 Senate elections. These are more of the safe states. Some of these seats just aren't going to flip. Colorado's not going to flip. I'll just put that as safe. Same thing with Florida. I'll just put that as safe as well. Those seats are not going to flip. Ohio and Iowa most likely won't flip as well. That story just goes along. But you have these seats that are more competitive. 7 really competitive seats, I would say. It's going to be very difficult for Democrats to win these seats because, you have Raphael Warnock who said, I'm going to campaign on $2,000 stimulus checks. They don't get rid of the filibuster. They don't have the votes to pass $2,000 stimulus checks. Well, that's a liability to Raphael Warnock's campaign. He could lose because of that. Mark Kelly, he said he's going to get all these things done with related to health care. What motivation is there for the base to turn out if he hasn't gotten health care done? He could lose his seat as well, even with the shambles that are in the Arizona Republican Party. Same thing in Nevada. You could have a similar story there. What platform do Democrats have to run on in North Carolina where they haven't really had much success lately? Same thing in North Carolina. It's going to be hard to beat Ron Johnson, the incumbent, if there isn't much motivation for your base to turn out. Chris Sununu is a good incumbent, a good candidate in New Hampshire, and, maybe get a good candidate for Republicans in Pennsylvania. So that, those are, of course, big ifs, but you're looking at an image that is quite bleak for Democrats if they're not able to get their agenda passed. And, a lot of people said, if Democrats get rid of the filibuster, they'll be wiped out in the midterms. I actually think it's the opposite. I think if they get things done as a result of getting rid of the filibuster, they will have a better midterm because there's motivation for the base to turn out. That is not It is not the midterms are not as a result of moderate voters that swing towards the other party to the same extent that it is turnout. If you can turn out your voters for midterm, you will win the midterms, and that's what's happened multiple times. That's the reason Republicans didn't get wiped out in the 2002 midterms. Of course, there were other factors there, but that's of course one of the main things. They turned out their voters and they won because of it. Republicans did not turn out in 2018. Democrats didn't turn out in 2014 and 2010. Republicans didn't turn out in 2006. You have those same stories across the board. But what motivation is there for Democrats to turn out if their base has not done if the politicians they elected are not doing what they elected them to do? They elected Joe Biden to say he's going to give us 2,000 stimulus checks. They elected Raphael Warnock to say he's going to give us 2,000 stimulus checks. That's a big liability to them if that policy does not end up getting passed. And it's going to be a big problem for Democrats overall. And don't even get me started on the House, because the House is probably not going to look too good for Democrats, number one, because of the redistricting. You're going to have a lot of candidates that get redistricted out of the seats. And number two, you're going to have a lot of these people that are in Trump districts that are not going to have much patience for, ineffectiveness of Washington. And that's going to be a number of big problems for Democrats overall, all because they can't get rid of the filibuster because of Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. And it is quite frustrating for many Democrats. Many Republicans are elated because of it. But overall, this is a very important topic that I did want to talk about. Many of you may be bored by this, but I do think that it is very important, and I hope that you all enjoyed this video. So please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also follow me on Twitter and join the Discord. Those are both linked down in the description. But again, guys, thank you all for watching this video, and I will see you guys later.